The next thing I'm going to work on is the heater hose and heater control valve installation. Now, this is another place where these instructions could be better, because I knew that I had read somewhere about the servo motor had to be facing a particular direction. Over on the wiring diagram, it says, install with servo motor facing down as shown, which is fine, but I ought to mention it here, because if you're just following these and you don't remember that that was back on that page, which I had to search for about 5 minutes before I found it, you could screw it up. That's probably not the end of the world, because it's just connected with hose clamps, so you can probably rotate it. But okay, so this is the wire coming from the control unit that goes to the heater control valve, and it requires a ground. It says it can ground it on either side of the firewall. So that's one of those places where my little grounding block is going to be really handy, because there's 3 relatively small wires here. I'm going to put them in a one of these wire looms, just like I did some of the other stuff. One of those is a ground for the heater control valve. Find out where the slit is in this. The small stuff is harder to work with than the big stuff, because you can't quite get your fingers in there. What I'm going to do is get all 3 of these wires in there to start with. That white one's the ground wire. So once I get them all in there, I'm going to tape that so that they stay in there. And I dropped my big roll of tape before, and I neglected to pick it up. So that's pretty handy, I think. I think I can reach it. Looks like it's going to rain pretty hard. I'm going to be stranded in the shop, probably 150 yards away from the house. It's going to be pouring down rain. Okay. Get my tape around there and run it up close to the firewall. And cut it off. Slip the rest of the wire in it. My little white ground wire up to my grounding block. That stuff is hard to work with. But I don't want to have too thick wiring harnesses, thicker than I need. Somebody makes a tool that helps you insert this stuff in the wires in these looms. I'm not sure the tool wouldn't be too big for this smaller loom. And again, it's probably more suited to making a wiring harness where you're out in the open and have all the room in the world to work, rather than trying to fit it someplace where you've already got wires and they're connected. And that off about there. That should fit nicely. A little bit of black tape to finish that off. So there's the plug for the heater control valve. Here's the ground wire for the heater control valve. Take it up and put it on one of these lugs. I guess you could go too crazy with wire looms. You know, if you put everything in a wire loom, you'll have single wires, and that might not be the best. So anything that I have that's a single wire coming out of a loom will just stay a single wire. Okay, so there you have a place to plug in a heater control valve. It's grounded. That'll need to be tightened later. I'm going to actually tighten all those when I'm finished with what I know has to go onto them. So the next step is get out that heater control valve and see where I need to locate it so that the wiring will reach. Yesterday, I was trying to use this hose clamp And I didn't like how much free space there was there. I decided I was going to measure the outside of this, the outside diameter of this hose, and see if I could use the next smaller clamp. Turns out that's not going to be the case, because this is just slightly bigger than the hole in the next size clamp. So I'm stuck with this clamp if I want to use them. So I came up with this. I got an O-ring, and I'm going to just put the clamp on and then insert the O-ring behind this, between the heater hose and the clamp, so that it'll at least look like it's made that way. So that's what I'm going to try to do. Now, the other consideration I'm going to go with here is this is the shutoff valve. I've got to have the flow going that way, which is into the heater core. And I've got to try to get this hose on that end, which promises to not be easy. I might need to get some water or something and lubricate that so it slips on easier. But then my next question is, do I connect the hose to this end and have that attached while I try to attach it to the nipple from the heater core? Because that promises to be a struggle as well. But I could do that, I think, and so that I'm not fighting the weight of all this heater hose. There is the clamp here that had the original heater hose, so I can just rest it in there while I push it in, probably from underneath the car. So I'm going to insert at least this one onto the shutoff valve, and depending on how hard that is, I will try to, I'll make a decision on whether I want to try to do it with the heater hose fully attached when I attach it to the heater core, or whether I want to attach this sub-assembly then to the heater core and try to attach the hose over here when I'm done. So a little bit of water on the outside and the inside of the hose, and this went on fairly easily. It's going to be difficult to push on in front of the camera here because I'm reaching beyond the camera in order to put it on. But that's probably on far enough right now, but I'm going to try to, well, you know what? Can't get it any further. That's as far as it's going to go because it's running into the heat shutoff valve. About that. And this hose, I'm sure, is bottomed out against that. So looking at these nipples were about equal, so almost 100% certain that those clamps are going to be resting on about here. So they'll be behind the lip on this. Can't even see that. They'll be behind this lip that holds the hose on. So I think I'm going to do the same thing to attach the other hose. And then again, of course, the same thing to push it onto the heater core. Okay, there's a fitting all the way on, and as you can see, maybe the clamp is beyond the ridge on the shut-off valve, so we're good in terms of having it make a good connection there. The other thing, I didn't mention the size of the O-rings I'm putting on. They're 15/16 OD, 3/4 inch ID. So they have to be stretched over this hose a bit, but it makes for a nice fit. So here's what I'm going to try to go with to install it. I'm going to attempt to install it from the top side. I may have to back off on that and go and raise the car on the lift and do it from there. But I struggled with whether I should put these with the screws up to make it easier to change if I had to. And ultimately I came to the conclusion that heater hose is relatively cheap. If I have to replace this, I'm probably going to replace the whole heater hose. So getting to these while it's on the car isn't really an issue. It might be an issue if I was trying not to replace the heater hose, but for what it costs, that's what I'd do. Okay, so I'm all set up to try and put that on the heater core side. I've got a little bit of water here in basically what was the cap for the heater core. Gotta lubricate that up a little bit. Have to remember to get my fitting on. This one I may have a problem with orientation of that screw that holds it on, because I want it to be accessible from under the car, and there's some stuff in the way, so I may believe that's on there. Maybe not. Let's see if we can go a little more. I hope this heater core is in there, is built to take this pressure on, because there's no way that you can hold the nipple from being pushed on. I didn't mention before, this is a number 6 metric socket I'm using on here. There's also a screwdriver slot. That's tightening up. Get it good and tight. You have a good shot at that from under the car. Now it's important that you're able to get this one off. It's not. The cover's a little bit loose on this one. But the hose is on good. But as I was saying, it's important you can get to this one while it's on the car, because if you ever have to change it, that one, you can't just cut the hose and deal with it. These two, you can cut the hose and deal with it. So this wire and this wire eventually get connected. I'm not going to do that yet. What I'll do next is I'm going to actually put the next the return line that goes to the water pump on this side. So that'll be just more of the same. Let's zoom in on there. There's what it looks like. I guess I should have more light under there. I didn't get out the portable light. I just have the overhead on. But another hose to be attached, and the heater lines, at least on this side of the engine, will be on. You probably aren't able to see it on the video. I'm not expecting you to. But with the additional light here, I was able to take the light and look at these connections here. And the hose is beyond the clamp, so they're going to be good. Better turn this back up, hold it in place while I tighten, because like I said, this one's important to have where you can access it if necessary to change a heater hose. Just want to turn on me. I guess a 1/4 inch power ratchet would be really handy here. Because you can hold it with one hand and easily press the button. A little tough to reach. I don't know if I mentioned this is a 6mm socket that these use. Okay, that's tight, but off camera I think I'm gonna loosen it and try to get the band of the worm clamp to go under the fancy part, because as it sits right now it's more visible than it needs to be. But you get the picture. Those things are connected. See how it's hitting the red anodized part of the clamp? I want to try to get that under it so that I can rotate the clamp around a little bit more and hide some of that. If you're going to be fancy, you might as well try to do it best you can.